Revealed. Heartwarming moment as black construction worker amazingly exposes engineer as humiliation. In a world where concrete towers kiss the sky, James, a 35-year-old black construction worker, faced the dawn with a fierce heart. Each morning, he rose before the sun, the cool Chicago air gripping his lungs as he laced up his boots, the same boots that had walked countless job sites filled with dreams. His hands, calloused and strong, told stories of labor and love, each line a reminder of the life he was building for his son, Malik. James wanted more than anything to make Malik proud, to show him that hard work could pave the way to the future. But lurking in the shadows of their dreams were stereotypes and limitations. James found himself in a male-dominated industry, where wealth and privilege, embodied by Mark, the arrogant engineer, often snuffed out the voices of everyday workers like him. Each weekly meeting left him deflated as Mark brazenly claimed credit for ideas that weren't his. The vibrant sketches James poured his soul into, ones that could rejuvenate their community, were dismissed like yesterday's news. As tension simmered, the weight of injustice pressed heavier on James's chest. It filled the meeting rooms with an air thick with irritation. But one fateful day, during yet another heated presentation, the moment of truth arrived. "Before we continue," he thought, gripping the edge of the table, "I need to bring this to light." James's heart raced as Mark touted yet another one of James's designs as his own, spinning it into his narrative of importance. With fire growing in his belly, he could no longer sit still. He stood up, the sudden movement silencing the buzzing chatter around him. Trembling hands betrayed his resolve, yet his voice rang out, steady and unwavering. "That's not how it happened." His words cut through the room like a knife, leaving executives wide-eyed. "This project is ours, a collaboration, not just your ego trip." Gasps filled the space, quick murmurs of surprise bouncing off the walls. James felt a surge of strength, the shared struggles of his fellow workers lifting him. Mark's stoic expression faltered, revealing a man who had wrapped himself in privilege and arrogance, blissfully ignorant of the very community they aimed to uplift. The revelation sparked an electric dialogue among colleagues. Voices rose like a symphony, rhythms of equality and respect harmonizing into something beautiful. It felt like a pivotal moment in the American dream. James watched as people shifted in their seats, nodding in agreement. Faces filled with awe and support surrounded him. Hope unfurled, mixing with the emotion in the air. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Yet even in this crescendo of camaraderie, doubt gnawed at James. Was this truly the start of something transformative? Or would prejudice rear its ugly head again? His chest tightened at the thought, the collective strength in the room leaving him fragile yet hopeful. As he looked around, he saw admiration mixed with uncertainty. He was teetering on the edge of change, but what would it ultimately mean for him and his legacy? The chapter closed on that electric moment, hearts pounding with the promise of a reckoning, leaving James standing on the brink uncertain, yet determined to fight. The meeting room buzzed with an undercurrent of energy, a mix of disbelief and support washing over James like a fresh spring breeze. He had spoken up, and for the first time, it felt like his voice truly mattered. Colleagues in hard hats and polo shirts turned toward one another, whispers mingling with the fragile sense of solidarity that filled the air. Mark's face flushed as he gathered himself, stepping forward with a defensiveness that only fueled the tension. "This is not how things are done," he snapped, trying to regain command. The bravado might have once intimidated James, but now it served only to fortify his resolve. "No, Mark," James countered, holding the floor steady beneath him. "This is exactly how change happens. You don't just get to claim the work of others as your own, not anymore." The room felt alive. Slowly, one by one, other workers spoke up, sharing their frustrations. Lily, the project manager, chimed in with stories of her own struggles. "We've all been waiting too long to be heard," she declared, her voice strong. "It's time we take our rightful place in this conversation." James could hardly believe it. Each shared story transformed the atmosphere from latent anger to a resolute unified front. He looked around, seeing familiar faces that had once seemed lost in the shadow of Mark's overbearing presence. Ralph, a veteran foreman with years of experience etched into his weathered face, nodded in agreement. "We can't keep letting others define our worth. If we don't say it, who will?" As voices escalated with fervor, the room swelled with emotion. Caught in the swell, James felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride for the strong voices rising around him, fear of what Mark might do to quash this rebellion. Fueled by the collective spirit, James found himself stepping forward once more. "We need to rewrite the narrative," he proclaimed, warmth filling his chest. "Our ideas can lead to real change, not just projects thrown together to fill quotas." It was as though a dam had burst. The room erupted in applause and affirmations, igniting something deep within him, a sense of purpose, a slice of hope. But in the thick of celebration, a stark reality settled in. What would be the repercussions of this stand? Would Mark retaliate? The question gnawed at him. He stole glances at Malik, who had often been his motivation, waiting in the audience as part of a school project, curious and bright-eyed. Would this moment lead James to a path of greater opportunity, or jeopardize the very life he was striving to build for his boy? Just then, an unsettling silence descended as Mark cleared his throat again. "I won't forget this day," he said, an edged calmness spreading in his tone. James met Mark's gaze with defiance. The stakes were high, and the path ahead uncertain. They all knew one thing: voices clamoring for change could shatter the glass walls of silence that had long confined them. As applause faded into whispers, one question lingered in the air, heavy with potential. Was this just the beginning of a revolution, or the first battle in a longer war? As they all stood there, possibilities hanging in the air, tension coiling like a spring, James felt his heart rate spike. The outcome was still a mystery, and he couldn't help but wonder, would they be able to hold on to their resolve, or would fear crack their newfound unity? The air felt thick and electric as everyone exchanged glances, gauging the weight of what had just transpired. Just moments ago, they had all been mere cogs in Mark's machine. Now they were a heartbeat, pulsing as one. Yet, as James stood there, adrenaline coursing through him, he couldn't shake the pang of anxiety. Mark's warning lingered in his mind, dark and foreboding. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught Malik's look, a mix of pride and a palpable question. Did his dad really just challenge a man like Mark, a man who held so much power in their world? James's stomach knotted as he reached out to squeeze Malik's shoulder. This boy deserved so much more than fear. Lily stepped up beside him, her presence as calming as it was determined. "We did something incredible today," she said gently, her eyes bright. "No more backtracking. We're not backing down now. And we have to make them hear us," Ralph added, a fire igniting in his voice. "This isn't just about you or me. We have a whole crew backing us." The determination surrounding them was contagious. One by one, people began standing taller, fists clenched in resolve. James felt hope rise, yet it mingled as bittersweet with dread. What would be the penalty for their stand? As if sensing his turmoil, Lily leaned closer. "James," she said softly, "whatever happens next, we're in this together." His heart raced. Together. That word was magical. It promised strength even in uncertainty. "We will make a difference," James responded, his voice soft but firm. "And for all of us, we can't let fear win." Mark's voice broke the moment like a shattering glass. "This is your choice," he said, his demeanor shifting to a low growl. "But when the dust settles, don't expect me to hold your hand." The room turned icy. People shuffled, some cast looks of doubt, others straightened their backs, their choice already made. James's spirit burst with a still-growing fire. The truth of their working lives finally exposed. The world as they'd known it could no longer stay the same. "Then let us raise the dust," James shouted, the words exploding from him, resonating in the air like the echo of a starting gun. "Let this be the day we stand for more than just jobs or hours. Let us stand for respect. Let us stand for our families." Cheers erupted, swelling to fill the previously muted space. Mark's countenance shifted, a wind bending a willow tree, revealing the crack beneath his facade. The sharpness of his threat was there, yet vulnerability flickered. James felt lighter. No longer tethered, he unshackled himself. Once again, Mark raised a hand, a desperate attempt for control. "This is insubordination," he warned, his voice strained, adrenaline rising with each point he made. James felt the tension escalate, but instead of retreating, he leaned into it. "Insubordination? Or liberation?" he retorted, as his colleagues surged around him, their hum of solidarity growing louder. Suddenly, something shifted in the atmosphere like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. He could feel the fear dissipating, replaced with courage among his peers. It was a pivotal moment, but James understood it was only a fraction of what was to come. Seconds stretched into minutes, as tension wove thick threads between them. Behind him, some might still waver, but James felt a fierce glint in his heart. The road ahead was uncertain. He felt the weight of it rest heavy. As Mark's face twisted with fury, James sensed a transformation, not just within himself, but across everyone gathered, akin to a rushing river breaking through a dam. Together, they were ready to brave the rapids. And as a simmering thought took root, another question surfaced. What if Mark decided to strike back, to create chaos from their courage? The answer loomed dark and foreboding, leaving James on edge, wondering how far this newfound momentum could carry them. Soon, it would all come to a head. The roar of empowerment echoed in the air, a pulsating heartbeat that seemed to ignite every corner of the room. James stood tall, his fists clenched at his sides, the adrenaline surging through him like wildfire. Each cheer, each uplifting shout, fueled his determination even more. But in the back of his mind, shadows flickered. How would Mark retaliate? The impending storm loomed ominously, and James couldn't shake the feeling that their stand might come at a steep price. "Stay ready," he whispered to Malik, his eyes locked on the boss, who looked angrier than James had ever seen him. Malik nodded, his confidence rising with every shout of solidarity around them. Lilia's presence filled the space between them, a reassuring anchor in the tempest of unknowns. "Look at them," she said, a smile breaking through her earlier tension. "They're ready to fight." And they were. Faces transformed, no longer displaying fear, but a fierce resolve. Ralph took a step forward, rallying the crowd as energy. "Let them know who we are. We're not just laborers. We deserve our place. We deserve our voices. We are family." The crowd erupted again. James felt the swell of hope, the buzzing energy wrapping around him like a hug. Yet Mark's glare remained sharp, cutting through the warmth and leaving an icy promise of consequences hanging in the air. Enough. Mark's voice sliced through the noise, lower this time but packed with an unmistakable authority. "This rebellion will cost you." "What is the cost?" James challenged, his heart pounding louder than ever. "The cost is our dignity? Our families' futures? This is more than what you can take away from us. The words hung heavily, met with gasps and murmurs of disbelief. Faces turned, revealing glimmers of awareness. It wasn't just about today, it was about tomorrow. A future where their children wouldn't have to battle the same system of fear and control. James could see it in Malik's eyes. He wanted a world free from the shackles of oppression. That single look ignited a fire within him, pushing him forward. We fight for their future. For those who came before us. Our worth is not up for debate. Mark seemed to recoil at the sheer audacity of it. His face twisted, rage battling trepidation. You're all making a grave mistake, he warned, but the defiance in his voice sounded desperate, almost rattled. At that moment, the crowd surged with renewed energy. They were no longer a group of scattered individuals, but a united front, an unbreakable bond forged from shared hardship and dreams of better days. James's heart swelled with pride. They had crossed a threshold. Whatever came next, they would face it together. But just as the emotions peaked, a loud crash interrupted the moment, sending shockwaves through the gathered assembly. The entrance doors burst open. Instantly, all heads turned. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, bearing a briefcase and a wide grin. It was Thomas, the new union representative. "Did I miss the part where we decided to make history?" he called out, a lightness in his step in stark contrast to the tumultuous atmosphere. The crowd wavered, caught between surprise and eager curiosity. James felt a rush of hope surge forth again. But the tension remained. What had Thomas come to say? Would his arrival mean reinforcement or deeper trouble? The air flickered with possibilities, and with every breath, James readied himself. The next moments would shape their fate, but uncertainty hung like fog. As he looked around, he knew one thing for certain. They had already changed, and the fight was far from over. Now, the question hung in the air: what did Thomas bring with him? And would it tip the scales in their favor, or send them crashing down? Thomas strode into the chaos with confidence, the briefcase held tightly to his side. The crowd's surprise morphed quickly into murmurs of speculation. James watched as the union representative made his way toward him, exuding an aura of hope amidst the brewing storm. "James." "Malik." Thomas's voice rang clear, cutting through the static of uncertainty. "I heard you were making waves. Mind if I join the party?" James felt a flicker of relief, but was cautious not to let his guard down just yet. "What do you have for us, Thomas?" he asked, squinting at the man as if trying to read the contents of that briefcase from a distance. Thomas chuckled, his smile unwavering. "Oh, more than you might think. I've got some insights into Mark's playbook, what he might do next. And trust me, it's wild." He looked over the crowd. "You want to know why rebellion is worth it? Let me give you the facts, and then we can make a solid plan together." Before he could continue, Mark took a step forward, anger radiating from him. "You think you can waltz in here, Thomas, and shift the tide? You're nothing but a temporary distraction." Thomas met Mark's glare with unwavering composure. "And you're just a man afraid of losing power, Mark. But your reign of fear is ending." The defiance dripped from his words, igniting the moment. The tension crackled in the air. James could sense it, the kind of electricity that precedes significant change. He found strength in Thomas's words. Every member of the crowd stood a little taller, drawn in by the magnetic charge. "We need to rally around the real issues," Thomas continued, throwing his arms open as if to draw everyone closer. "Anti-union tactics, wage theft, unsafe working conditions. They have been documented. And you all have evidence to back it up, right?" Faces turned toward one another. Nods and murmurs of agreement filled the space. James felt Malik's hand on his shoulder, squeezing tighter in solidarity. "Exactly." James jumped in, emboldened. "We've faced rejection, we've dealt with intimidation, but we've also captured those moments. We can prove our worth." Mark's face twisted further, sweat gleaming on his brow. He was losing ground, and it was visible to everyone. But he was not ready to back down. Enough of this. You've all been led astray. Do you really think anyone cares about your plight? This is how business works. Your families will suffer. Ralph stepped up to counter. No, Mark. We're tired of suffering because of your greed. This is about more than just us, it's about our families, our futures. And you will know that we're not backing down. A chorus of agreement erupted, filling the hall with palpable energy. The fear that once lingered now transformed into something entirely different, a growing momentum. James turned back to Thomas, urging him. Show us what you've got. We need a plan now. Can we turn his threats into our strength? With a nod, Thomas unclasped the briefcase and opened it. Inside lay a stack of papers, documents filled with evidence and plans to build a case. The crowd leaned in closer, anticipation written on every face. Here's the plan, Thomas began, his voice steady. We take this to the higher-ups, leverage the truth to get the support from the community and the press. If we can expose the manipulations, the fear will shift. But before he could finish, a loud commotion erupted at the back of the room. A group of Mark's men stormed in, their faces set with hostility. Get out of here now, or we'll throw you out. One of them shouted, pointing threatening fingers at Thomas. The mood shifted instantly. Fear crawled back into the hearts of some. But James wouldn't allow it. He locked eyes with Malik, catching the flicker of resolve they needed in that moment. Stand your ground, he yelled, feeling the surge of unity again. We can't allow intimidation to stop us now. With Thomas leading the charge, hearts pounding, the crowd drew tighter, creating a wall of defiance. They were ready. The stakes were higher than ever. But could one strong idea, one united front, withstand the storm approaching? James's heart raced with the question, could their newfound strength survive what was about to unfold? The tension felt almost tangible now, filling every corner of the room. James could hear his heartbeat in his ears as fear clashed with adrenaline. Thomas stood resolute, eyes sharp and focused, the briefcase now seemingly a beacon of hope. Listen, Thomas shouted, drowning out the noise of Mark's goons. You have something he can't take from you, your voices. Let us show him that you want to be silenced. Malik waved at the crowd, his energy sparking a new fire within them. We support each other. We are stronger together. His voice resonated, echoing off the dull walls of the hall, igniting a wave of encouragement. Yet, Mark wasn't finished. He gestured toward his men, his voice low but potent. You think you can outsmart me? You'll regret this day. Trust me. But the crowd wasn't swayed. They rallied around Thomas, who quickly pointed to the documents in the briefcase. I know the risks, he said, but we have the power to change everything. We have proof and community support. Focus on that, not on his threats. The murmurs grew louder, encouragement rising like droplets before a storm. They were in this together. Anger was woven with hope, and defiance bubbled just beneath the surface. Give us the documents. A voice cried out from the back. Let us show him what we've got. James felt an electric surge. It felt like an entire community coming together, ready to take a stand. One by one, hands raised, fists clenched around their resolve. They were warriors for their families, their futures. Okay. Thomas opened the papers, the dim fluorescent lights flickering overhead as he shifted his stance to face the crowd. Look at this. Each page has evidence, wage discrepancies, unsafe conditions, everything Mark has been hiding from you. As he fanned the pages, the crowd leaned in closer, reading the headlines aloud. Wage theft. Unsafe conditions. Corporate greed. The accusations buzzed through the air, powerful, undeniable. Do we let him keep doing this? Thomas challenged, his voice rising with each word. Or do we fight back? Fight back. The crowd roared, sending shivers through James's spine. With every heartbeat, his belief grew stronger. These weren't just empty threats of retaliation. These were promises of action. Unbeknownst to them, Mark's expression darkened further. His hands balled into fists, eyes narrowing at the unity forming against him. Enough, he bellowed, stepping forward. I won't let this go unpunished. You'll see what happens when you defy me. But the sound of his threats fell flat, mere echoes against the rising tide of faith echoing from the crowd. No more, James shouted, voice slicing through. No more intimidation. We're standing tall. It was a turning point. The people, emboldened by Thomas, began to chant. One slogan after another layered into a powerful mantra of defiance. Just then, a woman from the crowd stepped forward. Carmen, known for her fierce loyalty, held up a cell phone, recording everything. We're not backing down. You'll see this. That's right, cried Malik, stepping alongside her. We're documenting the truth. If he thinks he can silence us, he is mistaken. James felt the fire burn brighter. The fear was waning, replaced with a harmonious roar of determination. They weren't just fighting for their futures. They were uncovering the real story behind Mark's facade. Let us take this out there, Thomas urged, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. We need to reach the press and the community. We need everyone to know why we're standing together. At that moment, James realized they were standing on the precipice of something greater than any of them had initially imagined. But as they gathered themselves to move forward, a part of him wondered, were they ready for the next phase of this fight? Just then, their rallying cry reached a crescendo, but what awaited them outside was still shrouded in uncertainty. Would the world embrace their cause, or would they face still harsher resistance? The question lingered like a heavy weight in the air, pushing them all toward the next challenge. Thomas pushed through the crowd, his expression a mix of determination and urgency. James followed closely, his heart still racing as adrenaline surged through him. This was at the moment they had fought for. They were about to take the first real step toward exposing the truth. As they reached the exit, the energy buzzed around them like a live wire. The crowd behind them pressed forward, a living wall of support. Let us go! Let us show them! Malik shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. James felt empowered by every word, every chant that coursed through the throngs of people. The cool air hit their skin as they burst outside, the fluorescent lights behind them fading into the backdrop of the setting sun. It painted the sky with fiery oranges and deep purples, a symbol of the battle ahead. Reporters were already milling around, cameras in hand, drawn by the commotion. They were ready to capture whatever unfolded. Over here, Thomas called out, waving his arms as they approached the gathered press. The murmurs faded, reporters turning their attention to the group of workers marching toward them. James felt a twist in his gut, a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Are you guys about to expose something? One reporter asked, camera focused intently on Thomas. Yes, Thomas declared, stepping forward with fierce confidence. We have proof of wage theft and unsafe working conditions from Mark Construction. It's time the community knows the truth. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. James could see the eyes of the reporters light up. They were eager to document every moment. He glanced back at the workers behind him, their faces painted with fear, hope, and a touch of disbelief. It was as if they were all holding their breath, waiting for the next words. Thomas held the briefcase tightly, opening it to reveal the documents, one impactful headline after another. This is what they don't want you to see, what they're hiding from us, he shouted, thrusting the papers toward the cameras. A reporter pushed forward, rushing to grab one of the documents. Can I ask, how many people are involved in this? Hundreds, Malik shouted, stepping closer to the reporter, eyes blazing with conviction. We're united, and we won T back down. As the press began to swarm, James felt the heartbeat of the crowd synchronize with his own a steady rhythm of bravery. He glanced over at Carmen, her phone recording everything, a smile breaking through the tension. This was the turning point. But then, the crowd fell silent as Mark emerged from the shadows, flanked by his goons. His face twisted in anger, eyes scanning the crowd like a predator. "You think this will change anything?" he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're wasting your time." The air grew thick with tension again as he approached, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. But the workers stood firm, their voices a low hum of outrage. "Your intimidation doesn't work anymore," shouted James, his voice breaking free from the throng. "We have the truth now." Mark's smirk faltered, just for a moment. The words hung in the air, charged with electricity. The reporters caught the shift, feverishly clicking their cameras, capturing every detail as the confrontation unfolded. Seizing the moment, Thomas took a step forward, holding the briefcase high. "This is just the beginning. We will take this to every outlet, every platform, until everyone knows your name for what it truly stands for." James felt the fire reignite in the crowd, shared resolution sparkling between them like fireworks. But beneath that surge, a cold drop of fear slipped into his thoughts. What might Mark do next? And that was the question that lingered, a dark shadow trailing behind the light of their newfound hope. What would happen when the truth became too loud for Mark to ignore? He stole a glance back at Mark, who was now turning red with fury. There was no backing down. They were in this for the long haul. But were they prepared for the storm that would come next? Amid the tension, the crowd shifted uneasily as Mark's eyes narrowed. Anger twisted his features, and it was clear he was not one to take threats lightly. The gathered workers stood shoulder to shoulder, creating an unyielding wall of humanity. James felt the resolve radiating from them. It was palpable, a shared heartbeat surging in his chest. "Is this really what you want?" Mark hissed, taking another step forward, his voice low and menacing. "You think the community cares about your pathetic claims? I can crush every single one of you." James glanced at the workers beside him. Faces that once wore worry now displayed fierce determination. "We won't be silenced anymore," he shouted, echoing the sentiment surging through his veins. "We're standing together for justice." The reporters sensed the growing tide of emotion, their cameras zooming in on each speaker. Thomas caught sight of the tension flaring in Mark's expression and seized the opportunity. "This isn't just about construction," he declared, his voice rising above the din. "It's about the safety of every worker, the dignity we deserve." One by one, more voices joined the chorus, shouting affirmations, their words intertwined and powerful. "We deserve rights. No more fear. We are not alone." Feeling the swell of courage, James blinked back tears. This was more than a protest. It was a movement coming to life. Then, as if cued by the energy in the air, a cry broke through the crowd. A young woman, one of the workers, stepped forward, her voice quaking at first. "My daughter is watching this. She needs to see that freedom comes from standing up," she said, her eyes wet with determination. Carmen turned her camera toward her, capturing the moment, a mother laying bare her struggles, igniting something deep in the heart standing near. James's heart swelled at her bravery. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was voicing the unspoken fears of many. But Mark wouldn't budge. "You're making a mistake, and it's going to cost you," he warned, eyes darkening with threat, taking another step toward them, his goons inching closer as well. The vibe shifted instantly. The sounds of chants dimmed slightly, the fear creeping back in again. James tightened his fists, glancing back at his friends. "We can't let him intimidate us," he said, his heart pounding. "We've come too far to turn back now." "Agreed," Malik said, determination igniting in his gaze. "We have witnesses, evidence, and a community ready to rally around us. Mark can't hide from the truth. A palpable silence fell over the crowd as he finished. The air crackled. James could still see Mark's furious face distorting his confidence, but he remembered the woman, her daughter. That image pushed him forward, igniting a fierce determination even he hadn't felt until now. We will take it step by step. We'll start by filing a complaint, getting the press on our side. We'll make it impossible for Mark to brush it under the rug. The collective murmur turned to a roar, as heads nodded and voices raised in crescendo. It was electric, a collective will powering through them, breaking the hold of fear. Let us move forward with our plans, Thomas shouted, raising the briefcase again, now as a beacon rather than a shield. Mark's face was a storm of confusion and fury, and James could see the panic flickering beneath the surface. They were winning this battle, but he knew there would be repercussions. Mark wasn't one to back down easily. Suddenly James spotted a group of workers forming a line, ready to step away from the crowd towards the entrance of a nearby building, organizing themselves as if gearing up for the next phase of the fight. This was moving fast. Adrenaline surged through him. But the thought nagged at him, what was happening behind the scenes? What desperate measures might Mark take? As they began to march, the chants of unity growing louder, he felt a shiver of unease slide down his spine. This was far from over. It was only the beginning. The stakes were rising, and they were teetering on the edge of something big. James took a deep breath, heart racing. The truth was just out of reach, but would they have what it took to pull it closer? The crowd surged as they marched toward the entrance, each footfall echoing the heartbeat of their collective resolve. James led the way, a wave of emotion washing over him, fear, excitement, and a newfound hope intertwined within. Each step was a declaration, a commitment to change the narrative that had oppressed them for so long. As they approached the building, a low murmur rippled through the workers. Some exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping back in. Mark's threats hung thick in the air, a dark shadow trailing behind them. James squeezed his fist, feeling the rough fabric of his gloves, reminding himself of that woman and her daughter. They had to do this. Stay close, he called over his shoulder, turning back to the crowd. Remember why we're here? The chants picked up again, but there was an undercurrent of concern mingling with the defiance. The entrances were barricaded, guards stationed like sentinels, watching as they approached. James's heart raced. Was this part of Mark's strategy? Do we turn back? Someone whispered, hesitation creeping into their voice. James could see the faces, their courage fluttering. No, he shouted, the conviction in his voice clear. We are here, and we are not leaving until we've made our point. They can't silence us. At that moment, he felt a push from behind. Malik elbowed his way to the front, determination etched into his features. Let us show them what we're made of, Malik said, his eyes glinting with fire. We're not just workers, we're more than that. We're a family. Hollers of agreement rang out, shaking the remnants of the lingering doubt as they encircled the entrance determinedly. If Mark wanted a fight, they were ready to give him one. As they crowded closer, Carmen weaved through the throng, camera poised. James, she called, urgency in her voice. This is your moment. Speak. He stepped forward, his breath hitching momentarily at the scene before him. The angry scowl of Mark's goons contrasted sharply with the brave faces of his friends. They were standing shoulder to shoulder, a tapestry of resistance. Gathering his strength, James began to speak, his voice rising above the din. This isn't just about us standing here today. It's about every worker who has felt unheard, every family counting on us to stand up for what is right. We deserve respect, safety, and the dignity of our work. The crowd exploded in spirited agreement, roaring back at him, souls ignited. As he watched their faces glow with fervor, something shifted within him. This was not just a fight for rights. It had become a transformative moment, sparking connections deeper than he thought possible. But in the midst of the commotion, he noticed Mark's figure stalking closer again, flanked by his muscle faces cold and menacing. Anxiety tightened James's chest. It was more than intimidation now. It felt dangerously personal. "What is the game plan, Mark?" James called out, his voice ringing through the crowd. "You think your threats can silence us? We're stronger than that now, and we refuse to back down." Mark's laughter echoed, cruel and mocking. "You think you're making a difference? You're nothing but a nuisance." But the crowd roared back undeterred. "We are here. We are united." The pressure swelled, and James felt the pulse of something bigger than himself. This wasn't just their fight anymore. It was a movement. But just as hope flourished, an ominous uncertainty loomed. Would Mark resort to desperate measures to quash their resolve? Suddenly, a crash erupted from behind them, and James turned in panic. A group of Mark's men charged forward, fueled by anger. His stomach dropped. The unity they fought so hard to build was on the brink of chaos. James's heart pounded as he braced himself for what was coming. Would they endure the storm, or would fear snuff out their courage? With emotions swirling, he braced for impact, ready to stand his ground. What choices lay ahead, and at what cost would they defend their newfound strength? The chaos erupted like a thunderclap, ringing in James's ears as Mark's men lunged forward. James's heart raced. Behind him, the crowd tensed, but fear transformed into resolve. He could almost hear their thoughts. This was their moment to stand tall. "Back! Back!" he shouted, standing his ground. As fists clenched, adrenaline surged, weaving through the throng of supporters ready to defend what they had fought for. This was not just a protest anymore. It was a catalyst for change. "Stay strong," James yelled, meeting Malik's fierce gaze. "Remember what we're here for." The words sparked an inner fire, echoing across the gathering. He felt their energy merge, a united front against the impending storm. Mark's men surged closer, but the workers stood resolute, a wall of unwavering spirit. "We won't back down," James shouted again, his voice breaking through the rising panic. The crowd took a collective breath, their feet planted and ready for whatever would come next. "Push back," Malik shouted. The energy shifted. What was once fear morphed into defiance. Arms enveloped around shoulders, and fists shot up. James found himself caught in the whirlwind of voices. United, they were unbreakable. "What are you waiting for?" Thomas urged, cutting through the tension. "Use your voices. Make them hear you. Make them hear us," came the chorus, ringing louder. The energy shifted from dread to empowerment, igniting a spirit stronger than any threat. James felt the pulse of hope thrumming through the crowd. It felt like a fist meeting solid ground. Then, a loud noise cut through the sound of a megaphone. "This ends now." Mark's voice boomed across the chaos. "Get out of the way. You're all just employees. You don't matter." James's blood ran hot. "Then let me prove to you just how much we matter." The words tumbled out. "We won't let you drown us in your ego anymore. We are not just workers. We are part of a community." The crowd rallied around him, a sea of voices rising over the din of intimidation. He caught sight of Carmen, her phone held high, capturing every moment. "We are family," she shouted. "And families stick together." A wave of energy rippled through, and with it came a aligning purpose. This was more profound than a fight. It was a stand against oppression, a declaration of worthiness. James turned back to Mark, who stood stony-faced, a mix of fury and disbelief clouding his expression. "You think threatening us will work? We're not afraid of losing our jobs anymore. We're done being afraid." Every syllable dripped with conviction. Mark's glower twisted into fury as James stood tall, meeting his gaze unwaveringly. He could see cracks in Mark's facade, the once unshakable confidence faltering as uncertainty crept in. But just as James felt victory warm his chest, Mark's voice sliced through the air once more. "You'll regret this. None of you will ever work again." The threat loomed like dark clouds over the amber horizon. "Try us," Ralph shouted back, stepping forward, fists raised in solidarity. "You can't scare us into silence anymore." Cheers erupted, louder than thunder, echoing against the concrete canyons. The crowd, now bound by shared purpose, matched the intensity of their fear with fiery resolve. James held his breath, poised for what would come next. Would Mark react with dangerous retaliation, or pull back in fear? The air buzzed with tension as the world hung in suspense, the stakes escalating higher with every beat of their collective hearts. Then, from deep within the throng, a collective chant sprang forth. "We are more than workers. We are family." Each repetition ignited fresh courage, a swelling tide of collective strength washing over them. Malik stepped forward again, his youthful voice lifting above the fervor. "Dad, look at us. We're making history." His pride shone bright, illuminating the path ahead. "No turning back now," James yelled, his voice roaring with passion, muscles tense with anticipation. "This is our moment. Together, we are unstoppable." And with that, they surged forward, a chorus of unity crashing against the barriers, standing between them and respect. As they moved, James realized this wasn't just a fight for rights anymore. This was a chance to reshape their lives, lives that echoed with hope carved from struggle. Then came the moment. Mark's men faltered, confusion twisting their faces as they faced the unwavering crowd. "Together," James shouted. "Let us show them who we really are." With that, they charged, hearts racing, fists raised high, a whirlwind of determination carving through the chaos. They were not just fighting for today, they were planting the seeds for a brighter future. As they overflowed into the streets, carrying their message, James felt a surge of hope wash over him. No longer could anyone be left in the shadows. This was their story, shaping with every heartbeat a movement ignited by courage, perseverance, and unity. And then it hit him. This fight was just beginning. But for the first time, he felt ready to face whatever storm lay ahead. There would be struggles, but they would not be silent anymore. The world was finally listening, and James vowed to keep fighting for Malik, for the community, for everyone who dared to dream. This was their battle cry. They were more than just employees, they were family. As they marched onto the streets, banners waving, hearts lifted high, James realized something truly magical. This was not just about work. It was about redefining the very notion of home, dignity, and pride. Together, they were creating a legacy built on love, change, and empowering dreams. And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky red and gold, they stepped into the light, a new beginning unfolding right before their eyes, ready to brave the next wave of challenges, together. This was their moment, their story, their fight. They would rise, and they would transform the future, one courageous step at a time. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share the love. The strength of our community depends on you.